Substats here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Welcome to the video. I am on the mini account. It's been a while since we dusted this bad boy off, but today I want to go through a guide on gearing. Gearing in Raid Shadow Legends. Let's be real, guys. Gearing can be, especially for new players out there, but this video is intended hopefully for new players, for intermediate players, kind of mid-game, and maybe verging a little bit into the end game as well. Some best tips, practices, and trends in the game towards the end of this video. But to get to the end, we need a strong foundation of knowledge about gearing that can be kind of daunting, kind of overwhelming. I can't imagine being a brand new player in Raid Shadow Legends nowadays. There's the Forge, there's a billion different gear sets here, there's a lot of different stats. I mean, new players in this game, even go to this little menu over here. There's like a billion different keys.
This complicates things a bit.
All of which you can get different gear, most of which you can get different gear or resources to upgrade your gear in Ascension, and there's a lot. I feel for you guys who are brand new to the game, and today I hope that we can kind of provide a compass as to, you know, where you should be kind of focusing, what matters the most, not to overwhelm everybody out there in terms of gearing here in 2024 and beyond, almost 2025 here at the time of this recording, because it's been a long time. So I hope to arm you guys with the info that you need to just not mess up is a strong word. I don't think you can really mess anything up beyond repair, which is the good news for those of you who are already started in the game. But just talk about the fundamentals and, you know, kind of some best practices along the way so you guys don't have to be overwhelmed and stressed out and confused. And sometimes it can just make new players, I see you in the comments, and kind of just make new players quit because it's just like, dude, this is too much. This is too much for a game. So the good news is, it's not that complicated. Once you actually, you know, play for a few months, you'll start to pick up on things in Raid Shadow Legends, not just in artifacts and accessories and gearing, but really in general. My biggest tip is just take the time. I know it can be annoying.
Penny, you've got Cheetos in your hair.
Oh, thanks.
You have to do something about Penny. She is interfering with my sleep. She's interfering with my work.
Why should I do something? You're the one who introduced her to online gaming.
But yes, but you're the one who said hello to her when she moved in.
I feel like as a new player to games, you're tempted to kind of just go through the motions and not really pay attention and hope that finally you'll just click. Things will, like, light bulb will go off in your head. I would encourage you guys to actually read. That pertains to masteries. It pertains to Hydra heads. Read what they do, bosses. Just take one moment. Even champions, read what they do. Even if you don't really understand, just read what they do, and eventually things will click a lot faster. But anyway, let's go to artifacts. As I said, I'm on the mini account. I'm probably going to switch accounts halfway through this video, but I really want to talk about gearing. So up top here, these are the artifacts, and these three are the accessories. So artifacts, we have the top row. The top row for me are usually the lowest priority in terms of fully upgrading to level 16. Now, 4 or 5 years ago when Raid came out, artifacts could go up to level 16. Today, they can still go up to level 16 max. There's an escalating cost as you upgrade your artifact, your accessories. So the higher you go in level, the more it's going to cost you. The less your chances are going to be to fully upgrade an artifact or an accessory. So keep that in mind. Because of that, you'll see I have a level 12 weapon on Visix the Unbowed. So I prioritize maxing out or getting to level 16. You can start by going to level 12 in the early game, but I start with the gauntlets, the chest, and the boots, right? So let's start with these three artifacts. These are going to be three of your most important artifacts to understand. The top artifacts, see this attack, 143, the HP, 2,800, the defense, 228. It doesn't matter which champion or which gear that I'm looking at here. It's going to be the same main stats. These are called the main stats. Attack, HP, defense. That's because on the weapon, on the helmet and the shield, that's the only stat they can have for a main stat. So it's going to be flat stats, meaning there's no percentage there. Whereas we look at the chest piece, of course, no, oh, there it is, a percentage. Generally speaking, percentage stats scale a lot better, right? Because all of our stats are based on the base stats of any given champion. So 50% HP is going to give a 50% HP boost based on obviously the base HP of that champion. So we're getting significant amounts of HP here, and you can see the total stats there. Now, when you add a buff to a champion, so an increased defense buff, that number is not going to be based on the base stat, right? So a good way to think of this is when we're in battle in Raid Shadow Legends and I receive an increased speed buff, that number is going to be based on all of my stats after my artifacts and accessories. Does that make sense? So increase speed by 30%. If I have a 97 base speed, it's not going to be based on that number 97. It's going to be based on the number after all of our artifacts and accessories are factored in. So that's why artifacts and accessories, they matter a lot, right? They matter a ton because those buffs will just make them even more powerful, whatever your total stats end up being on a champion. So back to our middle row here, so to speak, our gauntlets. I want to talk about what's special about each of these artifact spots for you guys. It will be easy to understand what is special or unique about them. So on the gauntlets, it's the only artifact or accessory slot, with the exception of amulet we'll talk about later, but the only artifact slot that we can get crit damage and crit rate. For damage dealers in Raid Shadow Legends, unless they have a built-in ability that gives them an extra crit rate or something like that, we want all raw damage dealers, meaning a champion that hits a target on their champion or a boss. Damage dealers, we want them to have 100% crit rate, okay? You can go to hellhades.com. They have a guide on every champion in the game, and you can see their recommendations for stat priorities. Usually on their nukers, their damage dealers, and it's usually fairly intuitive on damage dealers, we're gonna have 100% crit rate. That's gonna be the first priority. Getting these champions, even the starting champions, your Kales, your Alhains, your Galax, or your Aethels, we wanna get them to 100% crit rate, because in this game, we want our damage dealers to be landing a critical hit every single time if we can. So you can get that crit rate or crit damage as a main stat, we talked about main stats, on our gauntlets. So this is going to be a useful piece of artifact, for your damage dealers. Now, non-damage dealers, we have an Ultimate Death Knight here. We can run him in HP percentage or defense percentage, right? We can just build survivability on our healers, our revivers, anybody who's not out there doing damage for the most part. Now, as we scale into the mid game and the end game, then we can start thinking a little bit outside the box. Maybe we can have one of our debuffers or even one of our support champions. Maybe we can get a little bit of extra damage out of them by putting crit rate or crit damage on their gauntlets as well. But that's something you don't have to worry about in the early game. Just save that crit rate and that crit damage for your damage dealers. So your chest piece, well, it's the only artifact where we can get main stat resistance, as we see. It is a flat stat, but it's still useful, albeit very niche, and accuracy. So we can get a main stat accuracy, a main stat resistance. But for the early game of Raid Shadow Legends, for the most part, with some exceptions, like soloing, content with Ultimate Death Knight where you need high resist, for the most part, you're going to be going with usually HP percentage or defense percentage on your tanks, your revivers, your support champions, your healers, or attack percentage on your attack-based damage dealers. Now, in Raid Shadow Legends, there's 3 types of damage dealers.
Where are the others?
There's actually some additions, but we'll stick to the major ones, right? Attack damage dealers, which is the majority of nukers. Defense-based damage dealers, usually they're like kind of tanky champions that can actually dish out some damage too, scales off of defense. That's nice because you're building survivability in the defense and damage. You don't have to worry about attack. I see sometimes new players build defensive or HP damage dealers with attack. Attack does absolutely nothing for a champion that doesn't do damage based on attack. How do we tell how they do damage, Ash? Well, we just look at any of their skills. If we go from artifacts to the skills, we go here, damage based on defense. So now we know, right? Every champion that deals damage, every ability is going to have that. So you're going to easily know what stat you need to prioritize if you care about damage. So the chest piece, we can get flat stat accuracy, flat stat resistance, and then we can get HP, defense, or attack percentage. Usually we're going to be going with one of those 3 percentage stats. Flat stats, like we talked about over here with the helmet, for example, a flat stat HP, you can still get that gear. Doesn't mean it's good though.
The helmet off Rudolph's head and then eventually swings it and hits him.
Most of the time you can just sell all of your flat stat gear. It just doesn't do very well, especially as you progress inside the game, okay? On the boots, these are easy. Speed is king in Raid Shadow Legends. Speed on the boots should be basically your go-to for every champion on your account in the early game, right? While you're progressing. Now, there's some caveats to that. For example, campaign farming. when you're farming in campaign, and you'll know that a few months into the game or even before that, sometimes you can get away with just being faster than the enemy, right? So that only requires in campaign in like 12.3, which is the usual place that people XP farm inside campaign. You just need to be faster than Lord Shazar, who's the fastest opponent that you go after. So let's just see. I don't think I have him on this account. Let's just see what his speed is. I think it's like 104. Ooh, I got this off. Ooh, look at this offer. Pretty juicy, because I don't spend on this account.
You understand perfectly what I mean.
For example, the enemies that you go against in this game, they're usually pretty slow. You're gonna go first most of the time in PvE, right? So his speed is 101. So for campaign farming, you only need to be faster than the fastest opponent that you're going against. So, you know, you can usually get by with attack percentage, maybe on the boots. That might be the first time on your account where you experiment with something other than just flat stat speed on your boots. Flat stat speed is so important, guys. I could speak for ages about how important it is, but you really don't want to be going with percentage stats until you progress, so you really understand the decision that you're making, sacrificing that much speed. Now there's Ascension stats too, which is basically a way to upgrade and ascend and get an additional stat, right? An additional stat, which, you know, we'll talk about in a future video. But for all intents and purposes, speed on the boots, right? It might seem like, hey, but I just want to do more damage, Ash. I just want to kill everybody. But you're eventually going to encounter bosses and clan boss and harder mobs that you just can't kill in one turn. So it's very important to go first and then to go fast after that too, to get back around to your next turn before the enemy has too many turns. And in order to execute that, we need speed. And the only artifact or accessory, the only area that we can get speed is intuitively on our boots, right? So really, really important to go speed on your boots. I hope I've drummed that point home to you guys.
Pretty cool, huh? Now I'm an official fry cook.
All right, let's talk about accessories for a moment. We have the ring that can only be attack, HP, or defense. Flat stat. They're very simple rings. You generally want to kind of treat it like you do your chest, right? If you went HP on your chest, you're probably going to want to go HP, maybe defense on the ring for survivability. If you're building a nuker, and by the way, on nukers, don't be afraid to go defense on the ring. Don't be afraid to go HP, survivability, because a nuker is no good to you if they're dead. So first priority on every damage dealer is just make sure they stay alive, right? On the amulet, it can be flat stats, or it can be crit damage. Remember when I was talking about the gauntlets, I said it can be crit rate, crit damage. It could also be HP percentage, defense percentage, etc. Well, the amulet can also be crit damage. This is going to be one of your best sources of crit damage in the game. In the early game, it's often difficult to get crit damage as a main stat on your gauntlets, and then find enough crit rate in the substats, like here, for example, to still get to 100%. So in the early game, oftentimes, you'll be going, even with your damage dealers, crit rate on the gauntlets, crit damage on the amulet, okay? Of course, if you can, or if you spend in the game a little bit and get your hand on some good artifacts, you can absolutely graduate, or over time you can graduate to getting crit damage as a main stat, 80% on your gauntlets at 6 stars maxed, and then you can get another 40%, and then Ascension stats on top of that, you can really rack up the crit damage. In these scenarios, that's where it comes to flat stats, which we'll talk about in a moment. Let's talk about the banner. Accuracy, you can see it right here. Accuracy is gonna be one of the most important stats in the game next to speed, right? Talked about speed, how important it is. Accuracy, anytime we're doing anything to the enemy other than a basic attack, we need accuracy to do it. That means landing a debuff, decrease defense, weaken, decrease speed, hero reduction, any debuff in the game. But also it means manipulating their turn meter. There's a lot of champions that do something where Vizix doesn't have it. Actually, each hit has, she does have it, my bad. Each hit has a 100% chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15%. Well, she's not placing a debuff there. However, she is manipulating the opponent. She's doing something other than just damage. This is going to require accuracy. The only caveat or exception is if the ability says this skill does not require accuracy, which is a special ability that some champions have. Most of them don't. That means accuracy is going to be very important in the early game. So how do we get accuracy? The banner. The only caveat is If you're just starting out, you'll see that your amulet is locked. Your banner is locked. You need to ascend your champion all the way to 6 stars to unlock this banner. Once you unlock the banner, then you can get that accuracy banner. Now you can also get resistance or attack or defense or HP, especially if you don't need or you already have enough accuracy on your champion. How much an accuracy is enough accuracy? Generally, we say around 10 points of accuracy per stage of the dungeon that you're focused on. So most people start out focusing on Dragon's Lair. It's considered to be one of the staples, kind of one of the early dungeons, but also has some good gear in it. So in Dragon's Lair, for example, we're gonna go in here. These are all the sets, by the way, on the left-hand side. I'm kind of blocking it, but these are all the sets. You can see accuracy set will give you, for 2 pieces, it will give you 40 accuracy. For 2 pieces of speed gear, doesn't matter which 2 artifacts, any 2 artifacts, and you can stack them. You can have 3 sets of speed gear, and you can get a whopping 36% extra speed because they all stack, right? And we talked about how important speed and accuracy is. Both of these sets, speed and accuracy in Dragon's Lair, gonna be your go-tos, right? Eventually you can upgrade to perception gear in the Forge, which maybe we'll talk about in a moment. So what should be the thresholds that we really care about in these dungeons? All dungeons are the same. They're all gonna cost you energy, some keys too, but that's another video for another day. But energy, right? That's your resource that we're spending in order to convert it to silver and artifacts and accessories, right? Accessories we get in Spider, and artifacts we get basically every other dungeon, right? Just different types of artifacts, and you can see again on the left-hand side. So see this number over here, 2 to 4, 3 to 4, 3 to 5, 4 to 5, and then 4 to 6. Once we get to level 13 in any dungeon, not just Dragon's Lair, that's when we first get a shot at getting those juicy 6-star artifacts. 6-star artifacts are going to have higher percentage stats. We saw 50% on a 5-star Gauntlets on Ultimate Death Knight. Well, it will be 60% instead of 50% rather, when we get to 6 stars versus 5 stars. 4 stars will only be capped at 40%. So the star level of the artifact is going to, the higher it is, the higher, the more enhanced the quality of the stats that we can get from that artifact are going to be.
Oh, what a handsome man.
Sorry guys, I froze for a second there. Hope you didn't mind that. Basically, we want to go to the 6-star stages, okay? Let's talk a little bit about substats. So we talked about main stats on artifacts. Let's talk about substats on artifacts, right? If we go down here, we can see the substats. So each artifact, even if it's a rare artifact, right? We have rare, we have epic, we have legendary. You can see by the outline of the artifact. So you can see this shield is gold. That's going to be legendary, right? Legendary, we're going to get more rolls on the substats. Stick with me. I'll explain what that means in a moment. But you can see this is a purple background on this weapon, or I should say frame. That's going to mean that that is an epic artifact. And then blue is rare artifacts. So let's go ahead and take a look at the legendary. See that 3 next to accuracy and that 1 next to HP? That's an HP flat stat, but there's also an HP percentage. There's a 3 next to accuracy, 46 total, and then a crit rate percentage, right? We can see how it all adds up, by the way, if we go to the total stats, as I showed you guys earlier. So legendaries get 4 rolls, 3 in accuracy plus 1 on HP. The rolls are random, but we can kind of explore what an artifact has to offer us. Let's do it with a rare artifact. Let me switch myself around here. All right, so a rare artifact, it's rare, so we know it's only going to get 2 rolls on the substats. So we have attack flat stat, and we have crit rate 3%. Honestly, not a very good piece of gear. I would sell this. How do you know what to sell? Well, it comes down to the value of the main stat, the substat, and the artifact itself. Is the set good? We talked about the inherent value in speed and in accuracy and perception sets in the early game. So on this weapon, or this helmet rather, we're just going to upgrade it anyway just to see what we get here. Upgrade to level 8. So we get 2 rolls on attack flat stat. This is a trash-ola piece of gear. We're never going to use it. First of all, we don't like flat stats. We don't even like them in the substats, really. Really, you know, we want percentage base. We want speed. We talked about the most important stats. Speed, accuracy, crit rate, crit damage. These are getting my attention. Maybe not crit damage so much, but crit rate, speed, accuracy, those are stats that I really look for. In addition, substats too. In addition to that, I'm looking for HP percentage, defense percentage, and attack percentage as well, right? There's some situations where you might want resistance on champions, so it doesn't mean it's trash if it doesn't have those specific substats. But if I see a piece where I get to see, in rares, by the way, they unveil only 2 substats. Whereas if I have an unupgraded epic piece here, I'll get to see 3 substats, right? Now I have speed. Okay, I'm a little bit more interested. What about a legendary? I get to see all 4 of the substats on legendaries, right? So let's upgrade. I can kind of do an exploratory research as we upgrade artifacts. I would encourage you all to do the same. So let's upgrade to level 4. There we go. Instant upgrade unlocks at like level 30 if you're curious, by the way. I think maybe level 20. So it's a little tedious in the beginning. But hey, I upgraded to level 4. Every 4 levels, we get 1 substat roll. So flat stat HP. Okay, not exactly what we're looking for there. And there's no speed here. And you guys know, if I don't see speed substats, I'm automatically a little cynical about this piece providing me value on my account. But I can do some exploratory research. I can make the decision at every 4 levels. Let's take it up to level 8 and then see more info. It's going to cost me a little bit of silver. Now I have 2 rolls of HP flat stat. What do you guys think? Is this good or is this bad? You see the attack main stat, but we already know that every weapon is going to have attack main stat. So what do we do in this situation? Well, I got to be real with you guys. If we look at this set, it's called life. Okay, so what does life do? Well, we can look at it. Life. Every set, you can see the stat bonuses right here in your artifact collection. It gives me HP plus 15%. So HP, it kind of intuitively makes sense. It's probably the stat that I care most about. If I'm already going for an HP set, I might as well double down on more HP. That's great. So hey, if this was HP percentage, maybe I would consider it. But even as a free-to-play, even on a new account, I'm still not going to invest in maxing this out. There's no speed here. In percentage, it's better than flat stat, but we don't even have that. So yeah, sure, crit rate is nice. It's even nice that we got 2 in HP, but I'm gonna make the early decision to sell this artifact because honestly, I want the speed. I want that speed there. It's just not juicy enough to keep, right? Now, when it comes to upgrading your artifacts, as we said before, we generally want to start with and focus on the middle row. So I like to take, every artifact to level 12, and then as we get the silver, we'll start prioritizing the percentage stats that scale the best, right? Actually, scratch that. We'll prioritize speed. And then we'll prioritize the percentage stats, and then we can go to the rest of the stats, or the rest of the top row, so to speak, on our champions. Guys, I want to switch over to my main account and talk about some mid to end game tips. Be right back. All right, guys, so we're on my main account now.
This is my favorite place in the whole world.
So we're gonna up the tips here to kind of focus on the mid game a little bit more. So we talked about how to do exploratory research on our gear, right? Now let's talk a little bit about the type of ascensions that we want. So ascensions are a way to further enhance our artifacts and our accessories, and we do that in 2 specific dungeons inside the game. And again, even if you're not here in your account at this point, it's okay. Eventually, this will all make sense to you guys, and it will probably be useful at least to understand what these areas do. So there's 2 ways to enhance or upgrade your artifacts and your accessories in this game. I want to talk about both of them, and then I want to talk a little bit about the forge sets and what type of champions generally fit best with which type of forge set. Man, this is going to go long here, but hopefully you guys enjoy it. I want this to be rather comprehensive because I don't really have content that tackles everything out there. So these 2 dungeons, here, now I'll push myself over a little bit more. Phantom Shogun Grove is the newest dungeon outside the event dungeon in the game. And in this area, we're going to be farming for Ascension stats for our accessories. So that allows us to get those extra stats, which I'll show you again in case you forgot or are confused. Sand Devil gives us Ascension stats for artifacts. So Phantom Shogun, Ascension stats for accessories. Sand Devil, Ascension stats for artifacts. Essentially what we're doing is we're farming these oils, right? And these oils can be used as currency instead of silver to ascend our artifacts, which is kind of another way of upgrading them, right? So I said at the top of the video that everything's always been level 16 in the game. although that's true, they found other creative ways to further enhance or upgrade your artifacts and accessories over the years. So those are the 2 dungeons to kind of make note of. Now, there's another whole area that you may have noticed when we looked at some of the stats on some of the gear that we were talking about, even on my mini account. You guys may have noticed the plus and minuses, right? So check it out. Those are called glyphs, and there they are. Speed, triple roll on speed, that's great. And then +3. How did we get that little +3 or +5 or +3 percentage? We do that, and most of you probably know, through faction wars, right? Faction wars are super important in this game. You can only use characters of one type of faction in a faction war, and we consume keys, not energy, and our keys get reset every day. We can use these keys to farm up the red boss, and basically we're gonna be able to get not only valuable forge gear, not only valuable quests, aiming towards getting one of the better champions out there, Lydia, if you complete all your faction wars in the game, which should be a stretch roll. And, you know, to complete faction wars, you're not going to kill yourself. You're going to take a bunch of champions that you don't even know if are good or not to level 60. You can take them to level 40, level 50, and just kind of make slow progress in each of these faction crypts. And eventually, you'll get there, and you'll get your hands on Lydia the Death Siren. But along the way, you're going to get valuable resources for the Forge, for Perception gear, which is really good. We'll talk about it in a moment. And you're also going to be working your way towards Lydia and getting glyphs. So faction wars are super important. When you get glyphs, I'm going to use one right now for you guys. Man, a lot of pop-ups today, just like every other day in Raid Shadow Legends. Eventually, when we get our glyphs, we can come in here, and here we go. Yeah, let's use, hopefully I have a HP flat stat glyph. Every stat is going to have a corresponding glyph. So if I go to upgrade, that's just upgrading your levels. We've already talked about that. If I go to enhance on the right tab here over my head, you'll see these are my glyph section. So these are all glyphs. Resistance will give me a random roll of increasing my resistance depending on the substats that I have. Hey, HP substat or HP substat here, flat stat substat. You guys get the point? We can use an HP glyph. Let's use it. Costs a little bit of silver. Everything in this damn game costs silver, it seems like. And then we get an extra 225 HP to add on to the already 943 that we have. Not bad, right? I talked about stats and how they scale versus your base stats and versus your buffs and stuff like that. Remember that in the beginning of the video? It's also worth noting that champions have something called auras. And auras, essentially, let me click on one who, okay, here we go. These auras, they are based on your champion's base stats. I don't want to give too much info and be too confusing here, but unlike buffs, so an increased speed buff is going to be based off your main stat after all of your gear. You're going to get a 30% bonus or a 15% bonus on the weaker version. But on an aura, we're going to get 25% of our base. So all auras work like that in the game, right? So auras only pertain to the leader in the in your team, in your party, right? So if Arbias the Stonethorn was my leader, I would get 25% extra speed on all champions, and that would be based off of my base speed here. So I'd be getting an extra like 30 speed or so, give or take, right? On Arbias, but on everybody, it would scale off of their base. Unlike buffs, which scale off of the total. If I have an increased speed buff on her, it's going to scale off of the 272 total speed. Hopefully that makes sense. Trying to give some bonus tips along the way to you guys.
Help us.
So we talked about glyphs. We can use those. I would use glyphs wisely. The most valuable glyph in the game is a haste glyph, aka a speed glyph, because speed is king in Raid Shadow Legends. See this HP right here, 12 something or other? Defense 22. These are the Ascension stats that I told you guys about earlier. Let's go ahead and max one out. These are all my oils I've saved up by farming Sand Devils in the dungeons, which I just showed you guys. So we can ascend. This miraculously doesn't cost silver. We can go in there and get extra stats there too. So it's another way to upgrade your artifacts and your accessories. So now you know every way to upgrade. Levels to 16, Ascensions, and also your glyphs. And you know the difference between rare, epic, legendary, and mythical. Mythical's gear is kind of the newer, more premium gear, kind of hard to get in the game. But if we can find a piece here, it has a red border, and I feel like I'm probably staring at one, but here we go. So you see how this one has a mythical border, and see how this number is red? that means it's kind of like a boosted stat. Basically, we've already gotten a roll, a roll that was invisible out the gate, extra stat or extra boost to a substat. See the speed. We already had an extra roll there. So that's mythical. Again, those are more premium stat. I want to go through really quickly the Forge. Actually, you know what? Forge is great. You can look at the sets there and, you know, see what you have, see what materials they take. But I think it's probably easier just to go through this menu, right? And I have a whole entire video, as I mentioned at the top, talking about the preset manager that I would, especially endgame players, I would definitely recommend taking a look at that video. But for early game, let's talk briefly about every single set in the game.
Look at this. Somebody come look at this.
1 second on each, and talk about who would be using it or if the set's even worth your time. Life is kind of an old school set. You can use it in the early game. It's not going to be that great in the end game. Defense, by the way, I should say, stat over set, especially in the early game. What does that mean? Don't break your back. Don't use crappy gear just to get a set. A 2-piece set, this means you need 2 pieces to get the bonus. There's 4-piece sets and there's 9-piece sets. Kind of escalating bonuses. Don't break your neck or back or whatever trying to get, you know, the specific 2-piece when you're taking a major hit in the quality of artifact, right? Defense is okay, kind of like life. Speed is king, plus 12% speed is amazing. Crit rate can help you out getting your damage dealers extra, well, crit rate. We talked about the importance of that in the early game. So damage dealers are going to want crit rate. Damage dealers who already have 100% crit rate are going to want crit damage. Accuracy is amazing. You get 40 accuracy for every 2 pieces. And they stack, right? So you can get 80, I mean, before you even get your banner, which is your best source of accuracy, which we talked about earlier, when you get 6-star ascended, you're gonna have to rely on accuracy sets. You can get 120 accuracy, and you can use an accuracy or a lead, which just gets added onto that, right? It's gonna help you out tremendously in the early game. Accuracy is great. Resistance is niche. Probably won't be using a ton of it in the early game, but it's not awful. Lifesteal. You can use it on your damage deal. Anybody dealing damage can benefit from lifesteal. It's going to heal them based on the damage dealt. A lot of beginners put their starting champions in lifesteal. Daze, not very useful. It's one of the worst sets out there in the game. Curse got a big buff. It's useful in Hydra Clan Boss. It places the Hex debuff. Hex is very, very helpful in Hydra. And then we have Frost, not the best set, unfortunately. Frenzy, not really the best set, unfortunately. Regeneration, a great set. It's healing your champion by 15% of their HP every turn. Great for soloing content in the mid to the end game. You want to put it on a champion, well, capable of soloing content, or your reviver or your tanky units that you really want to stay alive. Immunity is going to make them immune from debuffs for 2 turns. The only thing about immunity is it can be removed. You usually want to use this on maybe your debuffer in the arena. It's more of a niche set. It's not the best in the game. Shield. Well, 30% HP ally shield for 3 turns. What does that mean? 30% shield based on the wearer's HP. So you want to pick a champion like this champion with 21 standing in front of it, but a champion with high HP. You put them in a shield set, you try to get as much HP on them as possible, and everybody starts out every turn with a 3-turn shield, or until it's, you know, removed or done enough damage to, based on the wearer's HP. Shield can be a great set, especially in the beginning of Raid Shadow Legends. Relentless, 18% chance of getting an extra turn, very good in longer battles, right? Because you have more chances of getting an extra turn. In the beginning of the game, I wasn't sure about Relentless, but trust me, it's pretty good. Relentless is tough. You can't farm it. You can only win it from winning tournaments and events. Savage, great set for damage dealers. Ignore defense is king in Raid Shadow Legends. A lot of ignore defense is going to give you a lot of damage. Savage is going to be a go-to set for all your damage dealers. And it's a 4-piece set, so you can pair it with a crit damage or a crit rate set if you want to, or a cruel set, which you can get from Clan Boss. Destroy is niche kind of for Scarab King. It destroys enemy max HP. It's a very niche set. You don't have to worry too much about it. Stun set is very, very popular, especially in the end game. Using 4 pieces of stun gear on a champion, preferably a champion with an AoE attack on their A1 ability, right? So their basic skills attacks all enemies. You have a chance, 18% chance of stunning every single time. If you pick up the Fearsome Presence Tier 6 Mastery on the defense tree, you can bump that up to a 23% chance of stunning on every single hit. It's really, every single skill, I should say. It's a really good set, especially for controlling your opponents. Provoke does the same thing. It controls your opponent's 30% chance to provoke your opponent, where they can only use their basic skill against you. Toxic places a poison debuff, good for longer battles to get a little bit more out of maybe a support champion on your team. Retaliation, a 2-piece chance to counterattack, a little bit more niche. Avenging, 4-piece set, counterattack when receiving debuffs, not the best set in the world, a bit niche. Stalwart is going to reduce damage taken from AoE attacks. Not the most popular set in the game right now, but good on a tank, can help support your team on those big beefy AoE attacks. Reflex, very good, but more towards the mid game and the end game, a chance to reduce a random skill cooldown. Well, look at these skills, right? We have cooldowns, 3-turn cooldown, 3-turn cooldown. We can get these down to a 2-turn cooldown, or basically reduce that cooldown, get back to our best abilities even faster when utilizing a reflex set. Reflex is really good because unlike Relentless, they don't actually get an extra turn, so they can't strip away their buffs, because buffs only last for, well, 2 turns usually on a 3-turn cooldown, so we can extend that duration or keep that duration vis-a-vis a reflex set. So I've covered most of the basic sets here, guys. I don't think I need to get into all of the more complex ones or the forge sets, because this video has gone, frankly, a lot longer than I intended it to.
No problem at all.
Curing can give you bonus heals. Cruel is great to pair with Savage because it ignores defense and gives you attack. Immortal is the other set that you get from Clan Boss. Cruel and Immortal exclusively through Demon Lord Clan Boss. Clan Boss should be a big priority for everybody out there. These gear sets are great. Immortal heals you and gives HP. So they're kind of the beefed up versions, so to speak, of life and attack, right? So they're the premium versions that you should definitely focus on. And last but not least, I talked about it earlier, but perception. You should be farming the classic arena and your faction wars as much as possible, because perception gear gives you 40 accuracy and 5% speed. What could be better, guys? Hopefully this guide has helped out a lot of you new players especially. Thank you for watching, and as always, take care, guys.